What you're looking at is a homemade bead die roller that I made up from some sections of square 1/4 inch wall, 2-inch tube, and some shafting. Found these at a local supplier, just 2 gears that were the same. Everything's pretty rough. It was just made to actually do what I need, just to do a little bit of bead die rolling for forming. Put some bushings in here. There's just square stock with some holes in it, a little hole for some oil to go through. And the dies aren't, everybody, I look at the price of dies on the internet and my goodness. What those are weld-on hubs for sprockets. You get them at TSC, Tractor Supply Company, or Princess Auto. And I chuck them in my lathe and change the shoulder, make whatever I have to make. They already come with a 5/8 shaft with a keyway in it, and I had cut keyways into this shafting here just to be able to use them. Works out really well, and I'll just show you a little what I was doing today. I've got it completed. I'll be right there. What I was working on was this stainless steel fuel tank guard, and as you can see, the lines have been put in with the bead die roller, and then to do some forming I used a sandbag and a teardrop hammer. This was all made out of plastic, and it was cracked and dried out, and this is to protect the wheel wash area from the for the fuel sender and the gas tank, because we get the wash hitting here. So now it's all made out of stainless. It's really rugged. I mean, it's got a couple of dings and dents in it, but it's under the car, and the whole idea is that the old one had rusted. Part of it was plastic, part of it's steel. So I wanted to redo this into something that was going to last, and certainly it'll outlive me. This is the heat shield for the Mazda RX7 FB body exhaust system, and you can see it's kind of beat up and rusty. It's been on the bottom of the car since the car was built back in 1985. The interesting thing is that you can see it's made up of a bunch of pieces. There's one here. We've got another section up into here, and you can see how these pieces are put in, added in on here. So what I'm going to do is first off I make a paper pattern, and then I trace out that paper pattern onto my sheet of stainless steel, and then I cut it out to that shape, and then take the beater bag, which is over here, and with a hammer start making the piece. So unfortunately I'm not going to be hammering and filming at the same time, but give you an idea of what you can make. You can notice also that there's lots of creases in here, so whenever Mazda did this, they weren't really worried about forming the metal perfectly. You can see all the creases, how it is. Not a big deal. I've traced out the patterns on the stainless steel. You can see where I'm going to make the cuts here. I use some tape just so it doesn't shift to keep the pattern pretty much where I want it. And this is 20 thou stainless, or 26 gauge. Really sharp on the fingers, so anytime you're working with it or handling it, I always wear a pair of gloves because it cuts through your fingers so fast, and the darn thing hurts. It's almost like picking up a razor blade. It's just steel I don't have as much problem with, but stainless is always difficult. What I've done here is cut out the piece of metal, and I've drawn a line on it to represent the line in here, and also another one in here. And I've been just using the beading bag, the sand-filled bag, with the teardrop hammer, and once in a while I take this hammer, which I've ground the end off too, and use that, and just keep working away at it. I've folded this edge over here, and I just use a pair of pliers, just like I've started on this end over here. Just start to get it to fit. Now what I do is I go over to the vise and use it as a sharp edge to break it. And then afterwards I'll go over to my arbor press, and I will just squeeze it with the arbor press, and then hammer it after again on the vise. Now sometimes when I'm doing the shaping, I also use just a body dolly, and I have it held in the vise right now so that I can use it for hammering. And I'll take you over to the car, and I just did a test fit. So this is the part that's
gone back in. I've still got to do a little more flaring at the back here, and it's got a couple up into the next portion, which I'm going to do. And because I won't be able to form the metal as tightly without a big press like they do in the factory, I'm going to have to put a couple of slits in it and hammer it, and a couple of welds and overlap it. But I think all in all it should work out quite nicely.
Just about there, been playing with it, banging around, doing a couple of welds. It takes a considerable amount of work, and the more you hit the metal, it tends to work hard and it doesn't want to flex as much, so you got to hit it again. But just about ready to mount it into the car. I've been doing some test fitting and positioning, so it won't be long before it's mounted. This is the last portion of the heat shield for the exhaust system. It's a rather large piece. As you can see, there's a joint in here. It's made out of at least 3 pieces, but the biggest problem for me to form this by hand out of one piece, you've got to see how it's got this here and it's got a curve, so quite a bit of change has to happen in the metal, and to be able to do it in one piece by hand, well, I don't think it's going to happen. So I used a plasma cutter, cut it out, and I'm just forming this now to the contour of it. And then what I'm going to do afterwards is remake this probably out of a couple of sections, and bead die roll it and put the relief on it, and make it happen. But I'm just looking in here. There is a hole through the center of it. It looks like it's at least 2 pieces. There might even be some insulation material inside that just to try to stop it. The car that we have now with the engine, we have headers on it, so it doesn't have the big catalytic converter here. Actually, there's 3 catalytic converters. It doesn't have that. We have just one racing cat on it, because anything older than 1987 in Canada does not require any longer to pass emissions. But the rotary is a bit of a stinker when it sits there and idle, so a racing cat that's rated for about 50,000 miles is what we use, and it just gets rid of that heavy unburnt fuel smell. So anyways, we'll keep at it.
Main heat shield, first fit. I've got to put the next panel in. There's actually a hollow cavity to stop the amount of heat from going back up from the engine and the exhaust system.
These are the line brackets, or not brackets, but what I can say, line components for the Fiat X19 79 to 1989 grill. Anyways, there's a bunch of them here. I've got orders to do 4 of them, and in the midst of this I'm doing another project, so unfortunately my shop is kind of small and I've got to keep flipping back and forth between what I'm doing. I'm also doing some work here in sheet stainless steel, but and using either a bead die roller. This is what I use for forming those radiuses. That goes in, and just some guide blocks, and goes through the rolling, and do 2 at a time. And what I'm working on is a 1985 Mazda RX7, and I had to redo all the heat shielding underneath the car. Give you an idea of all this that's going in. It was in steel, it was rusting, it was galvanized, but again it's rusting, so I wanted to do a better job than that. So here it is all in stainless along here in the back too. This is the gas tank guard, and from the wheel wash up inside the fender wells. So anyways, I keep packing away at this stuff, and eventually I get there. This is the last component for the Mazda RX7 FB 1985 heat shield. What we start out with, this is the original. You can see it's pretty heavily rusted. If I start sandblasting it, it's going to fall apart. What I end up doing then is making a pattern out of paper, and then I trace that paper pattern onto a sheet of stainless and cut it out. And the next thing will be to form the fold over bead all the way along here and along this edge here as well, and then start to hammer this into shape with the panel. I might use this and a teardrop hammer, or I might find a piece of pipe to start the bend and then work from there. Well, as you can see, I drew a line down here. I'm starting to use a teardrop mallet, and I'm starting to hammer this first curve into it. And I will continue on. Well, a lot of beating on the bag and some creases put into it. Is it perfect? No, but it will do exactly what I want. And I'll give you a shot of what it looks like completed. The heat shield is completed. This is the last piece that I had on the bench, now installed, and it's time to go on to something else. So, took me about 2 weeks of my spare time. I work full time, a 40-hour week, but my weekends and my evenings, when I get a chance, I'm not doing other things. This is how it came out. So, is it perfect? No, but nice and solid. We'll see if we have any rattles later on, and we'll deal with it accordingly. Thanks for watching.